Assalamualaikum and good day. Let's continue with the second part of our requirement analysis content. In the first part of requirement analysis content, we have looked at what is definition and then two types of requirement, which is non-functional requirement and functional requirement. And then we look at why we are investigating the current system. The reason is so that we know what is the current process, right? And then we want to know what is the current problem with the system and what might be the new requirement that the users want. In this video, we are covering on several techniques that you can use in doing system analysis in order to gain information from the existing system so that you can propose a new one. Some of the technique, maybe you have some experience doing it, or maybe you have using it without realizing that this is actually a possible techniques that you can use in gathering your requirement. Right? Let's have a look at the first one, which is background reading. Okay. So if you are doing analysis on a current system, what you can do is you want to get as much information as possible. The easiest way is to actually do reading. Okay, what kind of material that you can read from that organization? Okay, you can ask for reports, maybe related to that system, um, organization chart, so that you know who is, what are the departments in the organization that are using the system. You know how they are linked to one another, and you can also read the policy so that by the time you want to design the system, you are actually designing it in the way that the organization is approving it. And then job description. So you want to know who are your user and what do they do with the system, right? And then any documentation from the existing system. Maybe the existing system has their own user manual or any forms or maybe previous reports that you can refer to, because in doing this you are basically trying to understand the organization and trying to understand the processes that the current system is currently having. Okay? So these are the advantages. Partly do this, by doing this you understand the organization, and then you help to prepare for other types of fact finding, because you are trying understanding as much as possible about the organization and the process. So maybe if you think that background reading is not enough, you can try other types of fact finding, for example interviews or maybe doing survey, right? And when you are studying the document, you are basically helping you to identify requirement for functionality of the new system. Now that you know what the current system is offering or what kind of function that the current system is having, so you can propose a new functionality. Alright, the disadvantages of doing this is that maybe the document that you are reading is slightly outdated because the organization does not update it. And also because sometimes working as a system analyst, maybe you are actually from another organization, not from the same company. So when you read this, you might not be familiar with the terms that the organization is using, right? And this background reading is actually an initial stage of fact finding. So this is only the beginning. Okay, maybe you need to find more by interviewing because you don't have enough information just by reading the document from that organization. Okay, the second method that system analysts can use in helping them to gather the requirement is by interview. Okay, so by doing interview, of course, because you are able to talk to the user, you are able to have more in-depth understanding about the organization objective. meaning that maybe when you do the requirement gathering process, maybe you start with doing the first step first, meaning that you read the document first, and then maybe you don't understand about it well, so the next step is to actually to do interview so that you can ask more, right? And this require skill and sensitivity, so you should be very sensitive in conducting the interview. Okay, you should be observing it well, so you have to see whether the statement that comes from the interviewee is actually positive or negative, right? So this includes by doing this, you are able to understand the objective. Okay. Um, so you can actually interview, by doing interview, you can talk to the manager, to the customer, to the domain experts. All right. When you interview, there are two ways how you can do it. The first one is in the structured or formal interview. The second one is unstructured, meaning that it's very informal. You talk you interview them in a casual manner. Okay, the first one is more organized, whereby normally you actually prepare the content of the interview. Okay, you prepare the questions, which question to be asked first, second, third, and fourth. Okay, there are two types of questions that you can ask. The first one is open-ended question, where you can actually ask a very broad question, and the person that you interview can answer it in a variety manner. Okay, it's not specific questions. Okay, whereby you can also ask close-ended questions. This is like when you are answering your quizzes, right? Where you have option A, B, C, D. So it's that kind of question is called close-ended. Right? Advantages is that because you are talking to that person, um, you are able to that you are able to hear the respondent or the person to respond uh, adaptively, because you can ask that person many questions, so and you yourself can change the question a bit so that you get the answer that you want to hear, and then you can ask a greater uh, you can ask many times, meaning that you can ask for more to get more answer. Okay, sometimes when you ask the person that is involved in the interview, maybe that person is not the right person to ask. Therefore, maybe that person cannot answer, so you can skip it. You can skip the question. The disadvantages, it can be time consuming and costly, uh, because you need to go to that organization, for example, and that organization need to get all the person that you interview ready on time. Okay, or maybe if you have a that organization has a user, so maybe you want to ask the actual user that might be staying somewhere else, so the organization need to arrange them to come to the organization so that you can interview them, or you yourself might be going to that location yourself and interview the user. Okay, normally when you interview, you will tape it, you will record it. Okay, and if it's a very important interview, you need to convert the record into text. That is called transcribe. Why you do that? So that you can actually use the written record. Okay, you can actually use it software to analyze it. Okay. It can be sometimes the response that you get might be biased. Okay, maybe the user that you interview is the person that um, really does not like to use that system, so you can get a very negative feedback. Okay, maybe along the way when you are interviewing, there are some conflict. Maybe you have to resolve that. Okay, this is the guide that you can follow if you are new to interview. So you basically you need to plan first, okay, because you are asking question, need to be very neutral on your part. You cannot be biased, okay. You should listen and take notes, and then after you interview, You review back the notes that you have written and seek diverse views. Okay, so because you interview many people, so you can get broader information. Okay, these are a guideline that you can also follow if you are doing interview. Okay, this is best used when you are using structured interview because you are basically planning it well. Okay, who are the name, the location, what kind of data, so what are the sets of questions that you'll be asking first, second, third, and this is the idea for how long it takes so that you know that maybe one session maybe take only 30 minutes, and then after you interview you normally observe them, you actually see how do they behave, okay, what is their reaction. So you go and record it here because you might be interviewing many people, you might not be remembering what happened in the morning session or evening session, and any issues that might happen during the interview, so you record it here. And this is the template that you can use whenever you are interviewing. Okay, details who are the interviewee that you do, date, some notes. So these are your questions here, and the response that you get from your interviewee is here. And then this is how you can record what do you see, what is the feeling of that person when you are asking that question. So this is how you do it, right? So interview can be done in most of the projects, and it's good because it provides. Okay, document analysis is another method that you can use to gather requirement. It's slightly similar to background reading. It's just that document analysis is more concentrated in reading the business document. Okay, so you can give you historical and formal view of the system requirement. This is very specific reading related to the system that you are working or you are trying to investigate. So you can read any report earlier that is collected by the organization, any memorandum that is being written between the software developer of the current system with the user, any policy manual again, any training manual from the existing system. You can see the form that the user is currently having to have an idea what kind of data being captured and what was the processes, and any screenshot of the system. And the purpose of doing this is that you want to gather any numerical data from the system because you are reading the reports, right? So you want to see what was the data being used, okay, what is the completed task done in how many minutes, and then because you are reading the document, maybe along the way you can find any errors or any issues in the system. Right. The disadvantages of using this system is that you don't use this if you are going to change the existing system to a new system, and the changes is a lot. So no point of reading the system that you are going to scrap totally, right? And sometimes along the way, when you are reading the documentation, you don't understand it, and the author of the document is not there, so you cannot ask anybody. So this kind of method is useful if you are trying to find information about what is the information needed in the system, uh, where are the volume of data, large volume of data will be used, okay. What error rates, where does the error normally happen. It also provide, you want to know where it provides statistical data about the volume. So basically, this method is suitable if you are trying to get to know about the data involved. Okay, and then you have questionnaire. Okay, questionnaire is like you answering questions in Google Form, okay, or like whenever there are some the organization needs to get something from you, not sometimes they give you a link that you can click so that you can answer a set of questions. Okay, it can be done either via web based or being sending you a link in your email. It can also be open ended. where you have to type your answer or close question, whereby there are options given to you. You can select, and you can also use it to gather opinions. Right? This is the good thing about using survey. It's economical. It's slightly cheap because you can gather lots of information from lots of people. Yeah? You just send it out the email or link via chat software like WhatsApp, or um, or you might send it, for example, in the class where you are doing a class, so you can ask the students to click on the link and they can answer it straight away. Good for if you are collecting the information from people who are in different places. Um, and it needs some skill to do this. You need to be designing a very good questionnaire so that you can actually analyze it easily. So normally, if you design it well, you can actually fit in the response that you get from the respondent to a statistical software. Okay, that software will process data for you. It's good because it's taking a very short time. It's less bias in interpreting the results, because when you send out the questionnaire, the user is free to answer it according to their own opinion. The disadvantages, good questionnaire are very hard to design. You need some skills to do this. Um, there are ways on the designing the questionnaire that where you need some training on how to do this. No automatic way of following up. Okay, sometimes when you send out the link, maybe you send it to 1,000 people, maybe only 100 people respond it, right? So the same goes with you when you receive a link of a questionnaire via email. Sometimes you just simply ignore it, right? The questionnaire is suitable if you are trying to get information or gathering requirement from a large group of people, or from staff from different places, or is suitable if you are trying to get the requirement from the general public, especially if you are designing a system where public users are using it. Okay? The other type of method is called observation. Here, observation is where you are there and you are watching the process of the user doing it. Okay, so you normally sit next to that person just to see how the user actually using it, right? And you can use this to as a way to double check whether what information that you get from interview and questionnaire does it match with one another. This is more like a confirmation technique that you can use, right? So you basically when you do observation, you are actually observing how people carry out the process. See what happened to the documents when the user are using it. Okay, you can follow a process from A to Z, from the person start logging in, do the action until the process ends. So the good thing about using observation is a first-hand experience. You can actually observe it with your own eyes to see how the user actually use it. It is a high level of validity, meaning that because you can see it, so whatever data that you get out of the interview or questionnaire that you have gained earlier, then you can confirm whether that data is the same as what you are observing, right? And allow collection of baseline data. Baseline data meaning that you double check, you can actually confirm that what you actually see during observation is actually what the minimum requirement that the user is currently using the system. Disadvantage, people are feeling uncomfortable because you are watching them. Observation also requires some training and skills. You don't simply sit there and look. Okay. Logistical problem for analysts with staff who work shift. Okay, sometimes the system that you are observing is a kind of system that people are using during shift. Maybe you need to see how the user are using it during the night shift. Okay? Maybe when it's at 11 o'clock at night, so when people are very tired, so you also there observing them on how to using it, or you have to travel long distance just to go and see how they are using it. And there are some issues with ethical problem because you are there, because when the person is logging in the username and password, you are there, so there are some issues like that. When is it suitable? Observation is suitable if you want quantitative data is required, you want data, numerical data from the system. It's good if you are trying to verify the information, as I mentioned earlier. Maybe you get it from interviews or document analysis earlier on, okay, and you want to double check whether what you get is the same as what you observe. And you can use observation if the information that you get from different types of requirement gathering is conflicting with one another. So through observation, you can confirm whether is there, whether the data that you get from interview is actually consistent or not consistent with maybe from the survey that you have done. And this is good, especially if the system that you are observing is a complicated one. So you want to observe it from A to Z, from start to end. Okay. Another uh, requirement gathering method which you can use is called joint application design. Okay, this is more like a meeting, a formal meeting uh, where it is purposely done to bring a technical team, creative team, and business community in a structured workshop. So you have all the important people involved in a workshop, in a meeting. Okay? You can also have the client uh, involved throughout the development in order to get requirement satisfaction. Okay? So you can also involve the customer together. And the team members meet in isolation, and it's done in the a period of time, and it is a highly focused meeting. Right? So these are the members joining the meeting. Session leader who will be the coordinator. User and manager will be those who are providing the information. Okay, you have the sponsor, the owner of the system. You have system analyst, which is you, who it will be the listener. You will be listening to the discussion. Scribe will be the recorder, who will record everything, and IS staff will be the listener also. IS staff can be the programmer, database, IS planner, and those. It will be something like that. This is a very formal meeting, okay, where you'll be capturing all the scribble something here, anything that is to do with existing system. Okay, what will be the issues that will be discussed here, and then you have the one that is handling the meeting here, the coordinator, and they will have all the person that I mentioned just now in here. So it's like a very formal meeting where the purpose here is to gather the requirement to understand the current system and what the users want. It will be recorded. Okay. And the last method is prototyping. Okay, you have heard about prototyping earlier on, right? So whereby you try, whereby the analyst and user will try to build the early version of the system, okay, so that they have idea what the system will looks like. Okay, so doing this, you also have to interview user to collect the documentation, right, in order for you to design it.